Some women can't hide who they really are anymore. And men who are paying attention are starting to see it without needing red pill theories, without needing paranoia, without needing bitterness. They're seeing it in small moments, the kind of moments that used to be edited out, covered up, or softened by politeness. Yesterday I watched a short clip, nothing dramatic. A woman doing her makeup, talking casually to the camera like she's sharing a normal thought. She said, "If a man can't give me what I want instantly, I don't have time to wait." Then she laughed, shrugged, and kept blending foundation. That sentence wasn't the point. It was how easily it came out. The comfort, the total lack of awareness that she just revealed a whole worldview in one breath. Not just impatience, entitlement, not standards, demand, not preference, requirement. And once you notice a moment like that, you start seeing the same thing everywhere. A tone shift when she doesn't get her way. A casual insult delivered like it's normal. A straight face while she describes one sided expectations. A sudden mood swing framed as, "That's just how I am." A demand for emotional labor before basic respect is even established. Men aren't imagining this. They're not insecure. They're catching flashes, micro reveals that show the real operating system underneath the curated image. And here's what's changed. These micro reveals used to be hidden behind effort, behind the need to impress, behind social pressure to appear reasonable. Now they spill out in public, recorded, posted, and defended like they're virtues. Life is revealing people faster than they can pretend. Stress reveals people. Comfort reveals people. Disappointment reveals people. Attention reveals people. And unlimited validation reveals people. And the truth you already feel, maybe you just haven't said it out loud, is this. Some women aren't being exposed by men. They're exposing themselves. So stay with me, because once you understand why this is happening, your entire perspective on modern dating behavior changes. You stop arguing with what you see. You stop negotiating with confusion. You start reading patterns with clarity. And when you can read patterns, you stop donating your time, energy, and future to the wrong dynamic. Now, before we go any deeper, we need one core idea to frame everything: emotional debt. Emotional debt is the cost created by unresolved pain. Pain that was never processed, never owned, never healed. And the expectation that someone else will pay for it later. It's the weight of old betrayals, old abandonment, old insecurity, childhood wounds, patterns reinforced for years. And instead of that person doing the hard internal work, they carry the bill into the next relationship and quietly slide it across the table like, "Here, you pay." A healthy person can say, "I've been hurt before, so I'm careful." That's honest. An unhealthy person says, "I've been hurt before, so you owe me endless reassurance, patience, and proof." That's not honesty, that's debt transfer. And right now, a lot of women aren't hiding that debt anymore. They're broadcasting it without realizing what it reveals. There was a time when these patterns stayed private. The resentment, the need for constant validation, the fear of abandonment, the expectation that a man must fix what a previous man broke, the belief that her moods must be managed by someone else. Those things used to show up later, behind closed doors, once the relationship was established. Now they show up on day one, in captions, in relatable videos, in joking statements said with a straight face. "You need to heal me if you want to be with me. If I get triggered, it's my man's job to regulate me. If you can't handle my mood swings, you can't handle me. If I'm upset, you fix it, bare minimum. If you really loved me, you wouldn't need boundaries. They think they're sharing vulnerability, but what they're actually sharing is a blueprint, an expectation of one sided emotional management. And men are finally learning to translate these sentences into what they really mean in practice. I want relationship benefits without relationship responsibility. I want you to carry my emotional weight while I keep my freedom. I want you to prove yourself while I remain unaccountable. I want you to earn access while I keep exit options. I want you to pay for my past without me facing it. Once you understand emotional debt, the mask slips, makes sense. You stop asking, why is she like this? And you start seeing the structure. Unresolved pain plus modern incentives equals public entitlement. So let's break down why this is happening now, why the truth is surfacing faster than ever. There are system level forces pushing people's inner patterns outward. First, the attention economy. We live in a world where every impulse can be rewarded instantly. A hot take gets likes, a complaint gets sympathy, a victim story gets validation, a demand framed as standards gets applause. The more extreme the statement, the more engagement it gets. This changes behavior. When your sense of value becomes tied to eyes on a screen, you start speaking from the parts of yourself that generate reaction, not the parts that generate maturity. You stop asking, is this true? And you start asking, will this perform? And performance rewards entitlement because entitlement is emotionally loud. It's easy content. It gets comments. It gets attention. Second, therapy language without the healing. Modern culture is full of psychological vocabulary, triggers, boundaries, attachment, trauma, healing. That can be good when it's real, but a lot of people learn the language without doing the work. They can say, I'm healing, while repeating the same behavior for years. They can say, I have boundaries, while violating yours instantly. They can say, I'm triggered to excuse disrespect. They can say, I need safety to control your choices. They can say, you're avoidant whenever you refuse to tolerate chaos. This is the cultural shift. The vocabulary of growth has become a costume. Third, social permission to externalize responsibility. Victimhood has become a kind of social currency. Again, not because real pain isn't real. It is. But there's a difference between describing your pain and building your identity around it. When someone's identity becomes, I've been hurt, they start treating accountability like an attack. And that's when emotional debt becomes a lifestyle. A client once told me about a woman who said, I've been hurt so much that the next man must prove I'm safe. She wasn't requesting patience. She was demanding repayment for a debt he didn't create. Another woman posted, if I get upset, it's your job to regulate me. That wasn't self-awareness. That was entitlement in a soft voice. These aren't isolated slips. They're broadcasts of internal patterns, patterns that used to stay hidden until you were already attached. Now let's go deeper into how emotional debt forms, because this is where men get confused and trapped. Emotional debt forms quietly. A breakup that was never processed, only suppressed. A betrayal that turned into chronic suspicion. A father wound that turned into constant testing. A childhood environment where chaos was normal, so peace feels boring. Years of reinforcement from friends who validate bad patterns instead of challenging them. A social media loop that rewards attention seeking and punishes self restraint. All of this stacks up like financial debt. And eventually, the weight has to fall somewhere. So she enters a new relationship, and the debt doesn't disappear. It transfers, not always consciously, not always maliciously. Sometimes it's automatic. This is why men experience something they can't explain. The moment things get serious, the demands start coming that don't match the relationship stage. Reassurance for insecurities you didn't create. Patience for wounds you didn't cause. Emotional labor for patterns she refuses to address. Proof, 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 while she offers very little evidence of stability. A man told me recently, she trauma dumped on the third date. I barely knew her, but suddenly I was responsible for everything her ex did. That sentence is the whole problem. He wasn't dating her. He was inheriting her emotional debt. And this is what a lot of men are waking up to. You can't build a healthy relationship when you're being drafted as a cleanup crew. Now, it's important to make a sharp distinction here because men need precision. There is a difference between legitimate emotional needs and entitlement. Legitimate needs sound like this: I value honesty. I want consistent communication. I want stability. I need respect. I want a partner who can handle conflict maturely. Those are normal, grounded, healthy. Entitlement sounds like this: you must heal what someone else damaged. You must constantly reassure me, or you're the problem. You must regulate my emotions. You must tolerate my disrespect because I'm triggered. You must prove your loyalty while I keep my options open. That's not partnership. That's extraction. And men are seeing it more clearly now because women are saying it out loud, often with pride. A woman posts, if I get triggered, it's my man's job to fix it. Bare minimum. She thinks she's being honest, but she's revealing a belief. My emotional world is your responsibility. That's how imbalance starts. One partner becomes the caretaker. The other becomes the center of gravity. The relationship becomes a job. And here's what happens next: resentment. Resentment from the man who's carrying weight that was never his. Frustration from the woman who expects soothing as a requirement, not a gift. This dynamic doesn't produce love, it produces burnout. Now add the next layer: validation addiction. Modern life runs on a dopamine loop. Post, receive attention, feel a hit, repeat. At first it seems harmless: compliments, likes, DMs. But the brain adapts. It needs more stimulation to feel the same reward. Then behavior changes. Suddenly, she expects attention not just from her partner, but from the crowd, from strangers, from orbiters, from anyone who can feed the loop. And this creates a quiet contradiction many men are tired of. She expects exclusive loyalty from him while keeping a public pipeline of attention open for herself. You see it everywhere. Taken in the bio. Thirst content in the feed. Talk of commitment, but constant fishing for validation. Demanding security, but maintaining backup options. Preaching boundaries, but living like attention is oxygen. Now, let's be fair. Someone can post online without being toxic. Not every selfie is a red flag, but patterns matter. A person addicted to external validation will eventually reveal it, because no single partner can compete with a crowd. And when attention becomes oxygen, the relationship becomes secondary. It becomes a base station, a place to return to when the outside world doesn't hit as hard. That's not love, that's supply. Now, when emotional debt, entitlement, and validation addiction combine, certain tactics start showing up. Not because someone is evil, but because these tactics work in the short term. And if you don't recognize them, you can get trapped before you even realize what game you're playing. Here are the most common ones: early trauma, dumping. Sharing intense personal pain very early can sound like vulnerability. Sometimes it's genuine, but often the function is emotional fast tracking, creating a false sense of depth to speed up responsibility. It makes you feel like you're special because she trusted you. But the hidden message is, you're now accountable for my emotional stability. Manufactured drama as a test, a sudden tone shift, a conflict created out of nothing, a spike of emotion designed to see whether you'll chase, apologize, and prove you'll accommodate moods. A stable woman can communicate discomfort without creating chaos. Chaos early is not passion, it's a pattern, weaponized victimhood. The moment you set a boundary, she becomes hurt. The moment you say no, you're unsafe. The moment you pull back from disrespect, you're emotionally unavailable. This tactic reframes accountability as cruelty so she never has to change. Triangulation, mentioning an ex's effort, quoting a male friend's opinion, posting suggestive content right after a disagreement, bringing other men's attention into the room without technically cheating. The goal is leverage, not love. Push-pull behavior. Warm when you're compliant. Cold when you ask for clarity. Affection as a reward. Distance as a punishment. This creates anxiety, and anxious men become easy to control. These are patterns, not destinies. But if you repeatedly see them, don't argue with it. Don't communicate harder. Don't try to love someone out of a strategy. Now here's the key principle that will save men years. If you want to know who someone is, don't study their speeches. Study their small signals. Masks don't slip in grand moments. They slip in micro moments. So here are the micro signals men are noticing more often. Constant thirst, posting while demanding a monogamy. That contradiction is data. Endless villain stories about exes with zero accountability. One bad relationship is normal. A consistent pattern of everyone did me wrong signals a common denominator. Healing as a slogan with no evidence. If I'm healing has been the explanation for years with no behavioral change, it's not healing. It's branding. Inconsistency is lifestyle. Warm today, distant tomorrow. Affection when it benefits her. Cold when you ask for respect. Emotional stability cannot be faked for long. Double standards. She flirts publicly but expects you to be silent. She preaches boundaries but violates yours. She wants commitment while keeping escape routes. She wants loyalty while maintaining attention supply. These aren't accidents, they are patterns. Now let's make this real with 3 everyday examples. Because men need reality, not theory. Story 1. Mark. Mark met her during a slow season in his life. She came off soft-spoken, sweet, deep. At first she hinted at past wounds in a controlled way, enough to feel human, not enough to feel alarming. Then the pattern emerged. Late-night emotional crises, constant references to her ex, sudden spirals that Mark felt responsible to fix. He didn't realize it, but he wasn't her partner. He was her emotional emergency kit. Every time she felt unstable, she ran to him, not to grow, but to discharge. And Mark slowly became exhausted, resentful, always on standby. The lesson: if you become her therapist early, you will never be her partner later. Story 2. Jamal. Jamal dated a woman who looked self-aware online. Weekly posts about healing, accountability, inner work. The vocabulary was perfect, but off camera, the behavior didn't match. When conflict happened, she shifted into victim mode instantly. Everything became his fault. The growth existed only as captions. She could talk about healing publicly, but couldn't practice it privately. Jamal realized he was dating a brand, not a person. The lesson: real growth is boring, private, and consistent, not aesthetic. Story 3. Daniel. Daniel met a woman who said she wanted stability and commitment. The language was right, but her actions didn't align. She kept multiple guys in her DMs just in case. She posted attention fishing content for reassurance. She got defensive whenever Daniel brought up boundaries. The micro signal he ignored early was constant attention seeking, framed as, I'm just expressive. Over time, he realized she didn't want commitment. She wanted options. The lesson: you can't build exclusivity with someone addicted to external validation. Now, let's address one of the most damaging patterns men deal with today: projection. Projection is when someone assigns their unresolved issues to you. Instead of saying, I don't trust because of my past, they say, you're giving me reasons not to trust you. Instead of saying, I'm afraid, they say, you're unsafe. Instead of saying, I'm insecure, they say, you're controlling. So every honest conversation gets flipped. If you ask a reasonable question, you're insecure. If you set a boundary, you're toxic. If you refuse disrespect, you're emotionally unavailable. If you notice inconsistencies, you're paranoid. This is an accountability gap. And once a man is in a relationship where accountability is impossible, he becomes a permanent defendant, always explaining, always proving, always apologizing, often for problems he didn't create. Projection protects the ego, but it destroys the relationship. Now, let's talk about the market shift men keep feeling but don't always articulate. In early dating life, attention can create massive leverage. Options are abundant. Feedback is immediate. If someone builds their identity on being desired, they can get used to living off short-term attention. But long-term selection is different. Over time, men who want real partnership start prioritizing peace, stability, accountability, and emotional maturity. Not because they got boring, because they got tired. Tired of chaos, tired of inconsistent affection, tired of being guilted for boundaries, tired of being punished for wanting clarity. So the criteria shifts. Short-term attraction can open doors, but character determines who stays. And when people relied on attention tactics instead of building relational skill, the shift feels brutal. That's not an insult. It's mechanics. Attention gets you options. Stability gets you commitment. Character gets you longevity. And here's what's happening quietly. Men are adapting, not with rage, with standards. Men are learning to walk away earlier. They're not volunteering to become unpaid therapists. They're not funding emotional debt. They're not chasing push-pull dynamics. They're not tolerating disrespect framed as trauma. They're reading patterns faster, not because they hate women, but because they value time. This is what maturity looks like in modern dating. Commitment is no longer given by default. It's earned by consistent behavior. Now, I want to say this clearly because nuance matters. These patterns do not describe everyone. There are plenty of women and men who are doing real work. They process their past instead of outsourcing it. They take accountability. They respect boundaries. They don't use therapy language as a weapon. They don't treat relationships like debt repayment. Those people exist, and they're proof that growth is possible. This isn't a blanket judgment. It's a description of patterns becoming more visible. And acknowledging nuance doesn't weaken the argument. It makes it real. Now let's make this practical. Men don't need more commentary. They need a playbook. Here's what actually works. Study behavior, not words. Watch how she acts when no performance is required. How she handles disappointment, boundaries, conflict, and accountability. Words are flexible. Patterns aren't. Set early boundaries and observe the response. Not aggressive boundaries, simple ones. I don't do disrespect. I don't do vagueness for months. I don't do hot and cold. I'm looking for consistency. Her reaction is the test, not her explanation. Don't become unpaid therapy. Supporting someone is normal. Carrying their unresolved life is not. If you feel like a counselor, step back. Don't confuse empathy with enabling. Caring is healthy. Becoming the emotional manager is not. A woman who respects you won't demand you carry what she refuses to address. Ask specific questions early, not interrogations, clarity. What have you learned from your last relationship? What does accountability look like to you? What are you actively doing to heal? How do you handle conflict? Real answers reveal real maturity. Look for sustained evidence of change, not captions, not speeches, not I'm healing. Consistency over time. Have a calm walkaway line ready. No drama, no debate. This dynamic doesn't work for me. I wish you well, but I'm stepping away. That's not cold. That's self respect. Because here's the final truth men need to carry: you do not have to carry burdens you didn't create. You do not have to enter relationships blind. You do not have to fix someone who refuses to fix themselves. You don't owe your time, your energy, or your stability to anyone who treats you like a replacement therapist instead of a partner. Some women can't hide who they really are anymore. The masks that used to stay on for months now slip in days, sometimes in minutes. And men who pay attention are finally seeing the full picture. Not to fear women, to choose wisely, raise your standards, protect your peace, select based on patterns, not chemistry. And if you've seen these dynamics in your life, share your experience, not to hate, to warn, to clarify, to give other men language for what they've felt but couldn't name. Because once you learn to see it, you stop arguing with reality. And the moment you stop arguing with reality is the moment you stop getting played by it.